Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. There are some really big matchups heading into tonight, in particular the Bucks-Nets game, which, to be honest, we're going to focus a lot on this game, and more in particular, we need to talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo, what he did tonight, what he's been doing all season, and really over the course of the last few years. Last time I made a video kind of like this, it was talking about Steph Curry and how, at that point, I thought he might be the best player on the planet, but right now, in this moment, I firmly believe that Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player in the world. And last time when I made that video about Curry, he immediately fell off a cliff, so hopefully that does not happen to Giannis. But Giannis has just been so incredible over the course of this season. This night in particular, he dropped 44 points, 14 rebounds, super efficient in a win over the Brooklyn Nets, a team that they have history against last season, playing against them in the first round. Or second round, excuse me. Theoretically, they could play in the first round this year if the Bucks get the 1 or 2 seed, and the Nets end up as either the 7 or the 8 through the play-in tournament. There is a real possibility that these two teams match up in the first round. So going into it, I was super curious to see how they would face off against each other. Of course, the Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo matchup is huge. Two of the best players in the world, and they both answered the call, but Giannis comes out with the win, not just with the win, but with such a dominant performance that's really just kind of showcasing what he's been doing all season, the last few years of his career. It's incredible what Giannis does, and probably the coolest part of it is the way that he has continued to improve over the course of his career. His biggest weaknesses a few years ago were free throws and threes, and in this one, to send this game to overtime, Giannis hit a step-back three that if I showed you a clip of Giannis hitting that step-back three like 3-4 years ago, you would have thought I edited that footage. You would have thought there was no way that Giannis Antetokounmpo just did that. But the way that he's just elevated his game consistently. He's taken the holes in his game, plugged them up to the point where he really doesn't have any holes in his game anymore. Hitting threes like that, whether it's off the dribble, catch and shoot, it was one of his big issues, and now it's really not a problem. Free throw shooting, which was for a long time considered one of his biggest issues as well. Tonight, he shot 15 of 19 from the line. He hit the clutch free throws in particular to ice this one towards the end. He did it when his team needed most, including hitting the shot to send it to overtime, hitting clutch free throws at the end. He's clutch. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. In fact, he might even win Defensive Player of the Year again like he's won in the past. He's a 2-time, maybe even now 3-time MVP. I know a lot of the conversation has kind of been centered around Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, kind of this like run it back of last year where the two of them were fighting for the MVP award. But Giannis really deserves a lot of that consideration. The Bucks right now are half a game out of the 1 seed, and the way that they've been playing, the way that Giannis has been playing, and the Heat have kind of been not super great. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks went out and grabbed that 1 seed, and if they do, I think there's a real case for Giannis to not just win MVP, but Defensive Player of the Year as well, which would be an incredible feat for a guy who's already done it once. To do it twice in the span of like 3-4 years is incredible. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. Offensively, there's nothing you can do to stop him. You can't just leave him open from 3 because he's going to knock down that clutch one. He's knocking down mid-range jumpers, attacking the basket. His handles are so much better. Of course, a great rebounder, a passer. There's no holes in Giannis's game. He's probably the best all-around player in the league, and I think the more that I watch him play, the more that I look at the league, which there are so many great players that you could make a case for to be the best in the league. In fact, I think there's like 5 or 6 guys that you could really make a case for as being the best in the league. But for me personally, I think it's Giannis. I think the way that he has been, the way that he led the Bucks to the finals last season, winning the finals MVP, that was like his big moment where, for a lot of people, and me included, I was like, I think Giannis might be the best in the world. But for the last like few months, I've been kind of back and forth. Of course, LeBron has been the best player in the league for a while, but at this point, I'm not quite sure that he is. And so I kind of wasn't sure there. And then Kevin Durant is a player. You've got Giannis, you've got Steph, who started off on fire. Of course, you have the reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic. You've got Joel Embiid, who's one of the best players in the league as well. You've got all these different guys. So there's so many guys you can make a case for, but I just think Giannis having no real holes in his game, being such a dominant force, and really just continuing to get better. He's only like, 27, 28 years old, and he's got a real chance to be a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year and a 3-time MVP by the end of this season. He's the only guy in the league right now, other than like LeBron, that I think realistically could have a shot at being considered one of the greatest of all time when it's all said and of course you've got Kevin Durant, who's going to go down as like a top 10 player, but I'm talking like legit GOAT argument. Giannis could be top 5 by the time his career ends if he continues on this path. If the Bucks come out of this upcoming season, which they've got a good chance to come out of it with the championship. They're one of the best teams in the league. Then Giannis, even without that, has an incredible resume. But as long as he keeps building up championships, finding that team success, because individually he's the best player in the league at this point. He's going to get MVP awards. He's probably going to get more Defensive Player of the Years. He's going to continue to be first team All-NBA. If he continues to get rings, he's got a legit chance to go down as one of like the top 5 greatest players of all time. And that's crazy to say for a guy who, like, years back and even in the past few years, so many people have criticized him for so many different reasons. He was one of the most criticized players in the league after that loss to the Miami Heat. People saying, oh, Giannis, there were takes like Giannis is the worst franchise player in the last 15 years and stuff like that. Chris Middleton was their true closer and their best player, which sounds insane, I know, but it was a legit thing that people were trying to push, that Chris Middleton was the Batman to Giannis being Robin. Like, it was ridiculous, the takes that were flying, and Giannis kind of just locked in, worked on his game last season, went into the playoffs, knocked off the Heat in a very quick series, one where people were like, oh, are the Heat going to get the best of the Bucks? The Bucks should have avoided the Heat. Didn't matter. They went in there, knocked him out without really breaking even a sweat, went into Brooklyn, beat the Nets in 7 games. They went to Atlanta, beat them, beat the Suns. Giannis dropping 50 in the game to close out the finals. He has done so much to just quiet all of the narratives, continue to lock in and get better. He's got that mentality to be one of the greatest. He wants this. He wants to be great. He didn't run from Milwaukee when everyone was like, oh, will he go to Miami after that series loss? Like, is he just going to leave in free agency, go to a big market? He locked in Miami, or in Milwaukee, excuse me. They went ahead, got Drew Holiday, brought him next to him, and he's just incredible. What I've seen from Giannis, it's been unreal to watch his growth over the course of the last few seasons, and I think he is the best player in the world at this point. You don't have to necessarily agree with me. I know, like I said, there's a lot of different players that you can make a case for, but right now, if I've got to put a player on my team, I think I'm going with Giannis. If I have to take one player right now to make my franchise centerpiece, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I think, sure, you can make arguments for other guys, but Giannis is the guy I'm going with. Giannis is the best player in the world in my eyes. MVP is absolutely in consideration. I think he deserves not just to be considered like that third behind Giannis or Jokic and Embiid. He deserves to be in that conversation firmly. I think tonight really proved that. The way that he's been playing recently has proved that. Potential Defensive Player of the Year. It's incredible what he's been doing, not just this year, but over the course of the last few seasons. And I hope voters do recognize that. I hope they don't continue to have voters fatigue, because last year it felt like he got kind of shafted by that. So hopefully this year he is actually getting the recognition that he deserves in those votes. We will see. I'm sure he'll be All-NBA first team. That's probably not even a question. Defensive Player of the Year, he's firmly in that conversation as well. But let's hope he gets some of the MVP love he deserves. I'm not saying he is my MVP pick, because honestly, I don't know at this point. It switches every 5 minutes. Every time one of the candidates plays a game, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's really good, and maybe he should win MVP. So I'm not going to make any claims about that necessarily. Just Giannis is incredible. Also leading them past the Nets without Chris Middleton towards the end of this game, who got ejected for what was not a flagrant 2, but they called it a flagrant 2. It was a flagrant 1 at worst, I think, and I think it was a flagrant 1, but to eject him for that was kind of weird. He shouldn't have gotten ejected for that, but that's just another thing that Giannis did. Also shot 14 of 21, by the way, in case you were wondering. So super efficient 44-piece. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. He also just did this against the Philadelphia 76ers, literally the last game that he played. Giannis is the best in the world. Moving on from that, the Pistons and the Sixers played, and really I just want to talk for a second about Cade Cunningham. Cade is really, really good. There are a lot of people saying that if you don't have Cade as your Rookie of the Year, you're dumb or whatever. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Cade's been really good. He did struggle to start this season. He had a really rough start to his year, but I think Cade has firmly put himself in that conversation alongside Evan Mobley and Scotty Barnes. I don't think you can go wrong with one of the 3 of them. Once again, I'm not going to make any claims necessarily about my Rookie of the Year, because that's another award where I'm like, I really don't know. It's going to come down to the last game, I think, for me to pick the winner of that award, but Cade has been phenomenal. He's proven why he was the #1 overall pick, why so many people saw him as this special player that was not just worthy of being the #1 overall pick, but worthy of being the #1 overall pick in a stacked draft class. Cade absolutely deserved that. What he's been doing on the court for the Pistons, he's been their star, and he looks so ready to already take the leap to being a star, maybe even an all-star in the next couple seasons. He's just so poised. He's clutch. He is like kind of built for those big moments. It feels like whenever there's a close game, Cade steps up, he takes over. He's like, I know this is my franchise to lead going forward into the future. I'm here to do that. And that's exactly what he does. It's just super impressive for a guy who is so young to be so poised. And he looks so ready to take on the mantle of this franchise. The Pistons got lucky because Cade is that guy. And finally, I'll talk about the Chicago Bulls versus the Los Angeles Clippers. DeMar DeRozan dropped a 50-piece, which is now 9 50-point games in the month of March. We just got into April, so 9 was... It's a pretty good total. I think StatMuse put out that there were 9 50-point games this season before the month of March, and then there were 9 in March. So once again, I don't know what happened in the NBA in March, but I hope it keeps up because there's been some super fun performances. The Bulls really needed this win beating the Clippers. Like I said, DeRozan had 50 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists in an overtime win. 22 and 14 from Vucevic, 21 from Zach LaVine, 10 and 12 from Patrick Williams, who had a really solid game, continuing to work his way back from injury. On the Clippers side, Paul George had a little bit less of a great game than he did last game against the Utah Jazz. He still had 22 points, but he didn't play a ton. He only played 32 minutes because of his injury. Reggie Jackson had 34. You had 20 from Marcus Morris, who was really going off early in the game and kind of cooled down. 11 from Luke Kennard, 17 from Batum, 11 and 9 from Ivica Zubac. It was kind of just a big team performance, which is the way the Clippers have been doing it all season. They pushed the Bulls to the limit, but ultimately just didn't have enough against DeMar DeRozan, who really was on a mission. Maybe this win gets the Bulls back on track, but we'll see. They've really been back and forth. I've kind of wavered on them a little bit in terms of how I think they're going to do in the playoffs. They really need to have a big end to their season to try and gather some of that momentum, because the way that things are shaping up right now, they're going to have a really tough first round matchup, whether it's the Bucks, Celtics, Sixers, or Heat. One of those 4 teams are probably going to be facing off against them in the first round, so they're going to need to get that momentum. So those are my thoughts on the games today. There were a couple other games. The Hawks won in a blowout, and you also the Lakers getting blown out by the Utah Jazz, so not much to talk about there. Let me know what your favorite moment was from the night. Do you agree that Giannis is the best in the world? I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Helps me out more than you realize. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll see you all later. Real one, say it back.